So for today, a crash course in the PASTEUR Act. Let me start with a quiz. Have you used a fire extinguisher today? Now, you're probably saying, no, actually nothing caught on fire, but I'd like you to think again about that. Are you in a building? Does that building have a fire extinguisher in it? What would happen if a fire broke out? I'd actually argue that you are using a fire extinguisher. You're just not using the part that gets you wet, but everything else about it is there to protect you should a fire break out. And this idea is important because antibiotics are like fire extinguishers. Fires go quickly, infections go quickly, and by having the right antibiotic available at the moment you get an infection, you are protected. Without it, you're in trouble. Antibiotics are the fundamental safety net for everything we do in medicine. Surgery, cancer therapy, taking care of premature babies, all of this cannot happen without antibiotics. It's fundamental infrastructure that keep all of us healthy so we can go out there and do healthy citizen things in the economy. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's nice, fire extinguisher idea. What do I do with that? Well, let me tell you. So the thing that we need to work on globally is the idea that our society does not recognize the insurance value of having an antibiotic readily available, like a fire extinguisher. As a case in point, think about what happened with COVID, where the world literally caught on fire and nearly burned down for lack of adequate therapies. Now we have vaccines, now we have drugs, that makes a difference. But for a period of time there, we were without a fire extinguisher, and that was a huge problem. So on a global basis, we collectively need to think about how we can buy new antibiotics, and we always need new ones, and resistance is a real problem right now. We need to be able to buy them like insurance, like fire extinguishers. You're thinking, that sounds nice, but terribly well summarized with a lot of detail missing. Well, you're right. That's absolutely true, because this is a short video. But if you look below, there are going to be a lot of links that tell you about different things you can read and watch to give you more detail if you want it. But here's the crash course part, okay? Two ideas, push and pull. And we have spent, a group of, international group of investigators, colleagues from public citizens, people from national health agencies, a whole variety of folks have spent a lot of time thinking about how do we solve this problem of buying antibiotics as if they were fire extinguishers. And the list of the projects is shown on the slide, but the real key here is that we came up with two big ideas. There's an idea called PUSH, which is a way to encourage research to get done. And PUSH is really pretty easy to understand. It's a grant to help you go start a company to see if you can find the beginnings of a new antibiotic. We've got a fair amount of that kind of stuff. And it's also grants to help you move your product through what are called the various phases of development so that ultimately it gets approved. But the other thing we need is an idea called a pull incentive, something that we pay for when a new antibiotic comes all the way to market and it's an interesting new antibiotic and we want to have it available like a fire extinguisher. And that's where the PASTEUR Act comes in. This is a piece of legislation that was introduced by Senators Michael Bennet, Todd Young, and Representatives Mike Doyle and Drew Ferguson that is designed to cause the U.S. government to buy fire extinguishers, antibiotics, to protect us on an ongoing basis. And let me read to you about it. PASTEUR stands for the Pioneering Antimicrobial Subscriptions to End Upsurging Resistance, the PASTEUR Act. That's a great acronym. It'd be fun to make those acronyms up. It seeks to address this market failure and increase public health preparedness by keeping novel antibiotics on the market and improving appropriate use across the healthcare system. While current reimbursement between the government and drug makers base payment on volume, that is, we buy a drug when we put it into a human being. So that's the way we pay for all the other drugs, and that's the right way to pay for all the other drugs. The PASTEUR Act would instead establish a subscription-style model, which would offer antibiotic developers an upfront payment in exchange for access to the antibiotic. And that would encourage innovation. The fire extinguisher would get created, and it would ensure that our healthcare system is prepared to treat resistant infections. And it would also mean that we could limit the use of the new drug to the times when we actually have a patient who's on fire with a new infection. So we don't need to use it until we really need it. The PASTEUR Act would do a number of things to implement this subscription model. It would form a committee on critical need antimicrobials that would figure out what we need and how we rank the choices, because not all antibiotics are going to be worth the same amount. It would create this subscription model. And importantly, this model would be delinked. That's an important word. It means that the payment to the innovator isn't based on volume or use. It's based on the existence of the valuable antibiotic. The terms and conditions of the contracts would require the availability of the antibiotic. And actually, the contract would be paid out over 10 years. It would be worth between $750 million and $3 billion, depending on how good the new antibiotic is, paid out over 10 years. And at the same time, we would build on existing frameworks to improve appropriate use through things like the CDC National Healthcare Safety Network and other programs that collect data. And there would also be some transition measures in order to get the program going. So now you're asking me again, well, so what do I do with this? Well, the answer now is pretty simple. Tell Congress that you want them to pass PASTEUR. We need to get this done. And there are two ways to do that. You can email. There are the links for finding your representative, finding your senator. And you can call. And you can ask to speak to the office of anybody in Congress and tell them that you want to see the PASTEUR Act passed.